Today in the shop, we get to start back on Josh's car. We got a couple parts in here for our VG. Like we got us a spare crank sprocket, a new oil seal, a couple injector seals, intake plenum gasket, a couple PCV hoses. So that way we can actually put a real PCV system on here instead of the just completely deleted, blocked off breather setup that was on here previously. So if you guys have missed out, pretty much Josh's car was blown up. Probably one of the worst case scenarios other than a hole in the block, because we've got a hole in the piston here. So pretty much we've got a donor engine that we've been swapping everything over to, which this was definitely not that all painted and nice. It had a bunch of old crusty parts. But now this video, once we get it all timed up, we can start putting all of this stuff back on the motor and really just finishing it out, hopefully getting it dropped into the car itself. Now, I have not sorted out fuel injectors yet. Ultimately, fuel injectors were the demise of this car, cheap ones. So we need to get some good used ones or some new OS or OEM injectors. So that's one thing I'm still really just waiting on, other than a TT flywheel. I think those are the two items that we're stuck with that I need to source, find, or find something to use at least. We're gonna make pretty much all of this pile disappear. Now, the first thing that we're gonna start with today is we're gonna show you guys pretty much how to remove your crank sprocket if that thing is stuck and seized on, which you can see some of the rust and whatnot. Yeah, that thing's not coming off. So basically, a lot of times people like to drill these out, tap them, and then use a puller to pull it off to reuse it. I just cut it and I break it off. Put a new one on, call it a day. It's a lot quicker. You don't have to be as tedious and worry about not ruining it. Yeah, it stinks. The sprocket's like 70 bucks, but very, very, very rarely does it ever just come off. Thankfully, this one did, so we're actually going to use a used one. Doesn't matter, brand new or used, as long as it works and it's not cracked. But that's what we're going to do. We're going to pull out the angle grinder, and right here in this keyway, we're going to cut in between this tooth, and we're going to cut down into that keyway. The whole time that we're cutting, we're going to watch the crank and this washer or oil pump as we cut, so we make sure the blade doesn't touch either, so we can get the most penetration down of a cut into this gear. Then you pretty much just come back with a big hammer and a chisel, crack the thing, slide it off. I know you guys probably couldn't see because my fat hand was in the way, but since we didn't have a fresh blade, we actually managed to fully cut into the keyway and didn't touch the crank. Now grab yourself a chisel, punch or something of some sort, and we're just gonna hit it right here and split that gear. I don't know if you could tell by the sound, it's fully cracked through. Now what was impossible to pull off, now pretty much comes off with ease. Yeah, it's a little crusty. Now let's grab our seal puller tool and let's pull this crank seal out. Get a bite on that metal retainer ring of the seal and pry it outwards. I got this one from Lyle. Now we've got our new crank seal here. You actually don't have to lube this one up because they come pre-greased. Usually you don't want to grease or lube up the outside of your seal, so it has less like lubrication and more like grab, so it doesn't just like slide and pop out, you know. Make sure you don't fold the inner lip. Right now we've got it all on. We've just got it a little too started on the left side, so we're just gonna tap it in on the right. All that grease is squishing out. Tells me we've got a tight seal because it's consistent all the way around the seal. You want it flush with your oil pump, and that is precisely what we have done. We're just gonna lube that up. Now before you do anything, grab this and your woodruff key, place them correctly or roughly into position. Now slide this on. You want to grab another woodruff key so you can actually start this on straight, so as you tap it on you don't have to worry about it like moving, and as long as you get it on the first one here, you can send it the rest of the way back. Now when I place my woodruff key in, I like to place it kind of at an angle like this so that there's no way that it's too tall and it knocks it out. Basically to ensure that it will go over top or around it instead of pushing it out of place. Once it's started, grab some wood, tap it on evenly. You see it's starting to go on the crank. We've got that Woodruff key guiding it. Once you get where the crank's popping out, you can actually just hit the top, send it the rest of the way back. Now we're good to go. Now it's time for us to time it. Tensioner's in here just loose for now. So when you get your belt, it should have marks on it that go and pretty much line up to all your reference points on your cam gears. So you'll start with this side here with all of this writing. We'll go from this mark to this mark. You pretty much want to count your belt teeth before you put it on. So you want to count the belt tooth count between here and here is 24. Between here and here is 45. 24 between these two. And between here and down here is 59. I just checked mine, so now I know as I install this belt, I can actually use these reference marks that are provided. Sometimes these are printed wrong, so you have to check. So if your cam gear snaps one way, don't worry, you can move it back. Just be careful. If it snaps one way and your finger's in between, it's gonna tear your finger up. So now we're roughly gonna line these up with where they go. I always start timing it from this cam over and here, and then I pull all the slack in and put the slack here on the tensioner. That tensioned up. The driver's side cams are always at resting. So another thing that's kind of annoying about this side is it'll always pop up as you're working. What I like to do is just kind of lay a ratchet here or a tool of some sort that won't allow it to pop up and at least move off the teeth. Okay, so we're all timed on the cam department, or in the cam department I should say. Let's keep it tight on our idler pulley. It appears the crank needs to come up 2 teeth this way. Now that our crank's lined up, and you see we do not have enough tension to get this out here. Pretty much we're just going to snug the belt on the crank, turn it to tighten, and we're going to spin that around and take up the slack in the belt right here. Actually, it helps a little bit if you take the pivot bolt out. Slides back a little bit, gives us room to put it on. And now we push the tensioner. I say push it with about 10 pounds of force. Once you have your tensioner set to maybe 1 to 2 millimeter, tighten it and start there. So we're gonna back the stopper bolt out of our tensioner. Once that's out, you want to turn the engine over 2 full times, or at least just a little bit, to start pulling the tension out of the belt and making it up on the tensioner itself. Well, I've heard compression on all 6 cylinders. Everything's good. But for now, we're still just going to wait. Now that we got it kind of set in a position, we're going to wait 5 minutes before we turn it over 2 times, and we're going to check our tensioner as it's gotten all the time it needs to take the slack out of the belt. Once it's set 5 minutes, spin it over 2 times, 720 degrees. Check your tensioner with a 4 millimeter Allen key, and we're right there. We can barely not fit it in. So basically the spec is, I think, 3.6 to 4.4 millimeters to be exact. So if you can get a 4 mil, yeah, it fits now. We got all the slack out, we spun it over all the way, and we can actually insert it into the tensioner. Back your bolt out before you forget. And we actually need to go back and torque each of these 3 tensioner bolts, or nut too, to 12 to 15 foot-pounds. And then we can finally start to put it all back together. We got our upside down let's grab us a 10 mil socket, and I guess let's start pulling this oil pan off. This will tell us how old this seal is. If it just pops open when I only do one side, it needs changed. Or it's an old RTV seal. That's all it took. We're fully cracked loose now. Everything looks pretty good. We have now taken the time to go ahead and clean up the mating surface here on the block, the retainer plate, and the oil pump. So it's ready to take the oil seals that we have for the front and back. And we also just took our oil pan, cleaned it up, gave it a nice little bath in the kitchen sink, and rinsed it out a few times. It's ready to go on. Well, it will be tomorrow. We gotta let it dry out. I'm just gonna let any little bit in here residual dry. And thankfully we found them a good pan that doesn't have any damage on the pickup or the actual pickup itself. So we're gonna go eat some dinner. We may come back out here tonight. I am pretty motivated to get this done now since we are at this step. If this dries up enough, who knows, maybe we can toss it on tonight. If not, we will catch you guys first thing in the morning. So it's the next day, and well, we've already had a little mishap recording today, and we just had to take off for a little bit, chill out, and come back, because I got highly irritated. Well, let's just say when I bought a seal pack for the oil pan here, they gave me the wrong front seal again. Very frustrating, because I already had the RTV on the pan ready to get slapped on, back seal on, installed the front, no good. So now we're back at it again. We got to reseal the whole pan. Thankfully I got it all cleaned up before it dried up and made just this whole extra ordeal. So now we've got to go open another tube of RTV. Let's get this pan done and drop these seals on. When you do your oil pan seals, always put some RTV here in the corners, just kind of like you do on your intake valve cover gaskets, just to help that sharp edge seal. And then we'll do the same thing on the oil pan. We'll kind of spread it out in the same area so it just kind of cements on both sides. Don't forget that front seal too. Make sure it fits first. Don't be like me. I've already done this before, or had this happen before, so realistically I should have known better. Make sure your mating surface is as clean as possible. I probably went over it 6, 7, maybe 10 different times with a new rag just until there was nothing with some brake cleaner. Now that I finally had my pup come out here and help me get this all situated, let's finally put our new, not new, but freshly resealed oil pan on the block. Now you want to wait to put anything else back on your motor until you get your oil pan torqued down. So then you can put your gusset plate on and then your oil tree. Since I forgot to mention, take your dipstick out. Do not put your oil pan on with your dipstick in place. If you do, you're gonna pin it in and you're never gonna get it out. Just remember. And we will hand tight every other one of these until we see RTV squish out the side of the oil pan, so we can try to evenly seat this oil pan down. Since we're using Nissan liquid gasket, we can torque it down in like 10 minutes after we set it into place. And then we can return to service in like 2 hours, I think. Now we've got the gasket squished out pretty much everywhere, just hand tight. Now we wait our 10 minutes and then we'll just tighten it down pretty much hand tight. I think it's like 2 to 5 foot-pounds, but my torque wrench does not like the feeling of that low of a rating. So we wait. We go back, we smear it all out after we torque it down. Now we're gonna wait maybe 30 minutes or so just for it to kind of get a little tacky. Basically, so when we flip it over, that any residual oil that comes over and down into the pan, we will not have to worry about it actually disturbing that seal and whatnot. But this one I am like 100% sure is good to go. We got a nice squish all around, nice and even. A1 this time. I'll just put this gusset plate here in place. I do gotta find one more bolt. This next part's gonna be a chore. We gotta find a good tree to put on here, so let's just get her done. So we actually had to flip it over to put it on so we didn't drop all the oil everywhere. We got the gasket on. We smeared a little bit of RTV on it. Pretty much since they RTV'd this last one, what it looked like after I razor bladed it is that they really took a wire brush to it and took some material off. So had to smother a little bit on there just to make sure we got a good seal, but at least we don't have a huge bead smashing out like they did previously. let's start grabbing all of our accessory brackets and let's start tricking this motor back out. So we'll start with our engine mount bracket, I believe. Maybe? Yeah, we're good. Don't worry, we'll go back with a wrench or a ratchet and check all these. For your power steering bracket, this bolt right here will be your longer bolt. Now let's see if we can get this power steering pump on. I guess we can throw this on real quick. Pretty much finish most of this off. There we go. Now let's tighten these all up to spec, get our tensioners worked out. We can't do much with the belt system yet because we got to switch some pulleys here to accommodate our stock pulley. And then we'll be back in a moment. Now that everything's mounted and bolted up, we even got our engine mount on and we got all of our wiring ran about where we want it to go. And we also, while we were here, we knocked out the knock sensor and the sub harness. That's literally just a ratcheting wrench job, taking your time. If not, you can reach your hands in and use your two middle fingers to turn it in or out. Now hopefully we'll be able to see a little bit better over here on this side. I guess I can tilt the engine stand a little bit. So now we get a little bit more light shining down here and can show you guys what's going on. With no further ado, let's put these manifolds back on. Now we are going to have to go back and clean all these up. They already have been ran, so that way our fingerprints won't necessarily be burnt into them. However, they still will like discolor and stuff from getting all of our greasy hands. So we'll definitely clean those up. I always do one final check with a wrench or a breaker bar just to make sure we're fully where we want to be. Can't always use a torque wrench on these, but I'm pretty sure it's supposed to be like 32 to 43 foot-pounds. I guess while the 14 mil's out, let's just throw this on. I suppose that means the engine mount bracket is next. Like I said, we're not maniacs. We come back through with an actual ratchet, get a hand feel so we know. Sometimes the impacts, you might think it's tight, but it might just be snug. I think that means the last thing that we need to do over here is install our engine mount. There are locking tabs here on your engine mount to keep it centered, keep it from spinning. Forgot the gusset plate. Thankfully this one is accessible. I think the next choice is we're gonna throw some PCVs on, and we actually need to take these off so we can put a hose here, and we need to get a hard pipe to go here in the back. We're really running out of things to do now, thankfully. So we did have some aftermarket intake pipes on here that require different hoses. However, I don't agree with that setup, so we're going back to stock PCVs, and you really can't beat that fitment of the rubber hose compared to silicone. Silicone, it's never long enough in my experience. Now let's pull all these caps. Suspicions are correct. And there's all that paint particle in there that you can introduce right inside, as he has just painted right inside. So it appears we got to clean this out first. And this hose right here kind of sticks out for any of you who weren't aware. And if your motor's out and you're putting all this on, try not to put it where it's inaccessible to you when you have to service it in the car, you know. Dang it, I'm a dummy. The camera wasn't even rolling. We just took the angle grinder or the cutting wheel and we separated this PCV pipe right here, and we kind of trimmed it right here off of the other pipe, which is technically the throttle body coolant lines that run up from here in the back. So basically we'll be able to eliminate that and just run this pipe. Sometimes you get a little stuck like prying it, just twist it in and out. Ah, that's why it's not fitting right. I forgot to take the 12mm bolt out. I guess one of the last things we can do, since we don't have our fuel rail here, we have to go get a rail and some injectors from one of my other cars at the other shop. So we'll just put our seals in place so we know that we don't lose them. PCV fully hooked up, fronts, side pipe. Unfortunately, I had high hopes at the beginning of this that we'd be able to get this in the car at the end of this video. It's not going to be the case. Reason being, since we had all these lightweight pulleys and stuff or underdrive pulleys. We actually have to grab a full new pulley set here from the other garage. We've got to get belts to match, and we need those injectors. That's really big, crucial things right now to get this thing dropped in, and I would really like to have them before we do. Fortunately, we're gonna have to cut it short, go in and edit, get this out for you guys today. Had the biggest mishap yesterday, and it was a crap show. But we've actually got a huge box in over here for Matt's car. So as soon as we get Josh's motor and stuff dropped in, we'll be able to turn this thing out, get it back to him, and then get to start on Matt's car. I'm super excited for that. I got pretty much all the parts in there ready for it too. That's it, we're calling it here. Sorry for the rant, and thank you guys for watching. If you haven't already, don't forget to drop a like and subscribe down below. Stay tuned for more videos and more content, and we will catch you guys in the next one. Peace.